we have, do we have next set of presenters? Is it online or they're here? Timmins and District Hospital, Charitable and Social Services Organization, and Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Good afternoon. So,
she's online. She should be here.
Okay. Can we have the member from the Timmins and District Hospital if she's online? She's already
Good
there?
afternoon.
Oh,
Good afternoon.
perfect. Good afternoon. So please start with your name. You have 7 minutes, and I will be interrupting you about a minute before. Over to you.
Thank you so much. My name is Kate Fife, and I am the President and CEO of Timmins and District Hospital. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Timmins and District Hospital, and more broadly on behalf of the patients and healthcare providers who call Northern Ontario home. I am here to emphasize a simple but critical point. Reliable, efficient connectivity between Northern Ontario and major centres like Toronto is not just a convenience. It is essential to delivering equitable healthcare for the people in the North. In Timmins, we care for people across a vast and dispersed region with a catchment area of 110,000 people, serving those living in the Cochrane district, as well as the adjoining districts areas of James and Hudson Bay Coast, Timiskaming, Sudbury, and the Algoma district. Many of the patients we serve are from rural, remote, and Indigenous communities where access to care is already fragile. Reliable air access to Toronto is essential to how care is delivered in Timmins. Like many northern hospitals, attracting physicians remains one of our toughest challenges in the North. Our hospital model relies heavily on locums and specialists who travel in from Southern Ontario and beyond to provide temporary coverage and specialist care for short periods. Reliable connectivity helps our locums and visiting specialists get here quickly and return back to their home practice, where they also have patients to care for. Without dependable connectivity, it becomes even harder to secure temporary physician coverage and specialist expertise. Physicians come from the GTA, Ottawa, Quebec, and other provinces, and even internationally. For many of them, the ability to travel to Timmins and return home efficiently is the deciding factor of whether they're able to provide care in Northern Ontario at all. When connectivity fails, the consequences are immediate and very real for our patients. Our locum specialists are now experiencing connectivity challenges on a regular basis. This past month, we had interruptions and had to accommodate emergency coverage measures for radiology, obstetrics, and our intensive care unit. When a flight is canceled, the next available flight is often 3 to 4 days later, which leaves critical risk to our patient care. In some instances, the hospital has had to charter taxis to drive physicians to their final destinations. Connectivity in the North matters because consequences are measured in people's lives. In Northern Ontario, life expectancy is currently an average of 4 years shorter than the rest of the province. That difference is not inevitable. It reflects real gaps in access, infrastructure, and timely care. One of the clearest ways to close that gap is to strengthen access to specialist care in Toronto and for physicians to be able to travel north. While we provide a broad range of services in Timmins, some patients still need advanced diagnostic surgery and highly specialized treatment that are only available in larger centers. For these patients, families, timely and reliable travel can make all the difference. When travel is delayed or disrupted, procedures are postponed, treatment plans are interrupted, and patients and families carry even more stress at already a difficult time. When access is reliable, efficient, care is more continuous, complications are reduced, lives are improved and saved. For Northern communities, Bill 110 is about protecting the the connections that help our health system work for patients, families, and care teams across Ontario. It is about making sure where someone lives does not decide how quickly they get care or how long they live. If we are serious about health equity in Ontario, we must treat infrastructure decisions, especially those affecting air connectivity, as healthcare decisions because they are directly shape how access to care is a reality. On behalf of Timmins and District Hospital, I urge the committee to recognize the reliable access to Billy Bishop Airport helps us attract physicians, support patients, and strengthens our health system. And as well, narrow the unacceptable gap in health outcomes between Northern and Southern Ontario. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
All right, thank you so much. Now we will be moving over to Charitable and Social Services Organization. Please start with your name for the answer. Thank you so much.
Dr. Millie Roy for CAPE. I'm sorry, I'm just going to screen share.
Sorry, I think
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you said, sorry.
there was a bit of a glitch in the form. My organization is No Jets TO, just to be clear. Thank you.
No problem. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
You can start with your name.
Sure. Hello, members of the committee. My name is Norm DiPasquale, chair of No Jets TO. No Jets TO is a grassroots organization whose aim is to preserve our revitalized waterfront while maintaining a regional island airport without jets. It is confusing to us to be at Queen's Park at the Ontario Legislative Assembly discussing land seizures that we're told are for an airport jet scheme that the Ontario government has no authority to initiate. That's not just because airports are federal jurisdiction, but also because this specific airport is run by the Toronto Port Authority, whose directors are almost all federally appointed. At every stage, the decision maker at the island airport is now, and always has been, the federal government. That means that at best, the Ontario government is demanding a blank check to seize as much of Toronto Island as it likes, as well as some beloved mainland parks and public spaces as part of an effort to mislead the public about whose decision this is. We are urging this committee and the Legislative Assembly as a whole to say no to this bill. First, as I mentioned, 7 of the Port Authority's directors are representatives of the federal government. We all know that there isn't an actual concrete proposal to expand the runway to wreck our waterfront for jets, but this all means that there won't ever be a proposal for approval unless the federal government and its representatives on the Port Authority agree to creating one. Nothing the province does to try and co-opt the municipality's land ownership or even try to usurp this 43-year tripartite agreement can possibly give it the power it needs to make this jet runway happen. Second, even with the province attempting to usurp the City of Toronto's role, 2 of the 3 parties to the tripartite agreement, which bans jets at the island airport, are controlled by the federal government. One is the Port Authority, which I've just discussed, and the other is the federal transport minister. It can and will only be amended if the federal government decides to make it happen. Perhaps a little history lesson on how this tripartite agreement works is appropriate, given how this bill is trying to introduce a new partner in the mix. In 1983, after extensive consultations, the initial tripartite agreement was signed between the City, Toronto Port Authority, and Transport Canada. This document stood the test of time as the original drafters understood that the island airport was meant to be a smaller regional airport, and by not permitting jets, it would remain this way. In 2002, Toronto Mayor Mel Lastman voted to build a bridge to the island airport with the aim to facilitate jets there. In 2003, David Miller was elected mayor on a promise to kill that bridge in order to avoid Pearson on the Lake. After he was elected, the federal government introduced legislation needed to end the bridge, and that's what the local municipality clearly wanted as expressed through an election. In 2013, Porter Airlines CEO Robert Deleuze called for jets at the island airport, and that is when No Jets TO was born. The debate went through City Hall until April 2014, when the City Council voted unanimously for a 3-stage airport growth plan that included studies, caps, and consultation along the way. This was a very thorough and well-thought-out growth plan, which would have been evidence-based with expert reports and information to back it up. In 2015, however, the Liberals were elected as Government of Canada and ended the jet proposal with a tweet. That tweet was from the federal transport minister, Marc Garneau, signaling that the federal government would not reopen the tripartite agreement for jets. Again, it was the federal government that made the decision, respecting the voice of Torontonians who didn't want their waterfront wrecked with jets. The provincial government made it clear during that fight that they would not get involved in any fashion, as they correctly noted that that airport is not in provincial jurisdiction. When a requirement came in 2025 to build a runway and safety area, the city worked collaboratively with Toronto Port Authority to amend the tripartite agreement to allow for this RESA and to extend the tripartite agreement to allow for the financing of that RESA, that runway and safety area, demonstrating that the City of Toronto has been a good partner in this agreement. All of this history shows there's no mechanism for Ontario to even get us to the point of creating a proposal and submitting it for approval. This land grab certainly isn't a way to do that. And that brings us to point number 3. Despite the Premier's attempts to pretend otherwise, all of the legal approvals and health and safety protections for pretty much every aspect of this fantasy jet runway, from filling in the best-loved parts of our harbourfront to landing the jets themselves, are federal and unaffected by this bill or anything else the province may choose to do. Fast forward to 2026, and we now have the Up Express that gets you to Union to Pearson in 28 minutes, connected to Bloor, Weston, and the Eglinton LRT. We have a revitalized waterfront that all 3 levels of government have invested in, which has given us excellent ROI. The East Waterfront represents the future of our city, with plans to house 75,000 people there, with thousands of much-needed affordable housing units in the context of our housing crisis. Pearson's expansion program just announced a funded plan to upgrade operations to handle 17 million more passengers. Torontonians see all of this and how jets do not fit in the picture at the Island Airport or our waterfront, but will their voice be respected? All the bill is before you today is basically a land grab. Looking at rebuilding Billy Bishop Act, it calls for the expropriation of Little Norway Park, a beloved community green space. Much of the activity in that park abuts the airport terminal, a well-used children's playground and wading pool, and a baseball diamond. These parts would likely be the parts that would be paved over for a larger airport terminal, road widenings, and who knows what else. Thank you. I take no comfort in the proclamations by this government that Little Norway Park will remain. It may remain, but likely the back part that really ties the community together will be paved over. This bill also calls for the expropriation of the whole of Toronto Island. Horrified Torontonians can only guess at the government's intentions here, which we would like to see clarified, but we are concerned with how growth might threaten Hanlon's Point, which neighbors the airport. Hanlon's Point is an important 2S LGBTQ+ safe space in Haven, and access to it must be protected. There's no reason for the provincial government to threaten these beloved public spaces, as the province is not the main decision maker on Island Airport expansion. This falls to the federal government, who can carry out whatever expropriations they like on city or provincial land. Why the province is unilaterally doing this aggressive bill and causing significant concern is beyond us. Our petition has received over 8,000 signatures since the announcement of the expropriations, which even caught the city by surprise. If the goal was to make enemies out of everyday Ontarians...
Thank you so much. That concludes your 7 minutes. We will be moving over to Ms. Roy. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Millie Roy of U Toronto and Ontario co-chair for the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. CAPE has concerns regarding the adverse public health impacts of the proposed expansion at Billy Bishop, particularly the pollutants that will be emitted by commercial jets, amplified by Billy Bishop being sited in a densely populated area, and with goals to possibly quintuple passenger volumes through the airport. What are the pollutants that we are worried about? In particular, top of the list are ultrafine particles, or UFPs. Almost all particulate emissions from jets are UFPs, which are 0.1 microns or smaller, much smaller than the typical PM 2.5s we talk about in regular air pollution, which are 2.5 microns. These UFPs lack monitoring, data, and regulation must be approached with caution. We'll also talk about the toxic gases, nitrogen and sulfur dioxides that jets emit, as well as noise pollution. Now, how do the commercial jets stack up against the turboprop planes that currently fly out of Billy Bishop? The turboprops are much more fuel efficient with lower emissions and therefore pose less health risks than commercial jets. And what are the health harms of each jet pollutant that I just mentioned, and how does this occur? So first off, when we breathe in the UFPs, they are so small, they cross across the lungs right into our bloodstream, sometimes across the gut wall as well, and then have access to the entire body. The smaller the particle, the more toxic it is. So UFPs cause lung disease, things like asthma and bronchitis, but also severe heart diseases. There is a strong link to heart-related death by heart attack, heart failure, blood clots, and so on. The UFPs actually travel literally up our nose using the olfactory nerve that we use for smell and wind up in the brain, where they cause direct damage and dementia, stroke, Alzheimer's, and so on. UFPs also cause diabetes, lung cancer. They get in the placenta and cause low birth weight babies and possible links to birth defects. Now let's talk toxic gases. NO2, nitrogen dioxide. Strongly, with meta-analysis level, the strongest scientific evidence we have, they are linked to premature death. They cause lung disease, heart disease, strokes, again, lung cancer, diabetes, pregnancy risks. And they cause neurodevelopmental delay, so intellectual disabilities, behavioral disorders. And the take-home message is that there is no safe threshold for exposure to these gases. And almost ditto for sulfur dioxide, a very similar list of risks, maybe minus the lung cancer and diabetes. And again, there are no safe thresholds for exposure to these gases. Moving on to noise pollution. Aviation noise in particular is identified as the most bothersome of all environmental noise sources, and the WHO has flagged this as a significant health hazard. Again, we have meta-analysis level evidence, the strongest we can make, linking aircraft noise specifically with heart diseases, and also with mental health issues, including cognitive impairment. And sadly, children are uniquely susceptible to noise pollution from aircraft by suffering hyperactivity and deficits in reading comprehension as well as memory, and this is all proven. So we need to learn from studies such as the first ever study that was done looking at health impacts that are specifically due to aviation-derived UFPs. This was done in 2024 in Europe. It showed that 52 million Europeans are at risk from these UFPs. And it is linked in Europe to hundreds of thousands of cases of high blood pressure, of diabetes, and nearly 20,000 cases of dementia across that continent. How far do we have to live from an airport to be at risk? Well, that fantastic study helps to answer that. If we look at the risks of things such as dementia, diabetes, and high blood pressure, the blue bars show us, the dark blue bars show that in the 5-kilometer range is our highest risk. But even at 20 kilometers, which are the pale blue bars, we are still at elevated risk for these health impacts. So how do those numbers translate to populations here in the GTA with our 2 airports, Billy Bishop included? If we look at the 5K radius, about 150,000 people live within 5K of Pearson. But that number is triple. About 450,000 people live within 5 kilometers of Billy Bishop, and that has to be considered. And if we look at that 20-kilometer radius, we have maybe about 7 million people living within 20K of those 2 airports. Moving along, we are very lucky to have specific data from a fantastic study done looking at death rates specifically due to UFPs in Toronto and Montreal that documented 1,100 deaths just within the scope of that one study. Again, cannot be ignored. And as part of that study, there was excellent air quality monitoring going on of UFPs in Bathurst Key neighborhood. You can see the photographs here, and it showed that Billy Bishop is the single largest source of UFPs in Toronto. On days when the wind blows from the airport up into that neighborhood, the levels of UFPs are doubling or tripling and easily exceed 100,000 particles per cubic centimeter. To give context, any level over 20,000 is considered unacceptably high. So in conclusion, if we're talking about modernization of Billy Bishop, we have to have evidence-based recommendations to create policy. UFP monitoring is critical. We want to look at other options, reduce traffic and idling of vehicles and aircraft. Consider 100% hydro-treated jet fuels, which actually, this cleaner fuel reduces UFPs and human health harms by 70% at a cost of under 5 cents per liter of jet fuel. Look at what other jurisdictions are doing around the world. They are trying to reduce air traffic and pollutants. In France and Austria, short-haul flights have been terminated where high-speed rail options exist. So we need to provide these other options. And finally, incentivize Billy Bishop's own bid to be an early adopter of electric aircraft. They have already purchased Canada's first beta charger. They have done test flights of electric aircraft over our waterways. And this is what modernization looks like. Thank you.
That's right. That concludes the time, and we will be moving over to the government side. I see the MPP Gallagher Murphy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to all of the witnesses here today for your deputations. And my first question will go to Timmins and District Hospital, to Kate Fife. Thank you very much, Madam Fife, for being here with us today. And I was listening intently to your remarks, reliable, efficient connectivity to Toronto. That does mean a lot. And when it comes to an equitable health system, that is critical. And for this government, having an equitable health system, having an equitable long-term care system so that people know that they can reach and have access to health care is our top priority. So I truly appreciate your comments, and being the past former PA to the Minister of Health and currently the PA to Minister of Long-Term Care. When I say equitable, I definitely hear what you're saying. So my question to you is this: what opportunities do you see, Madam Fife, as potentially a result of expanding the airport, especially as it relates to patients from your community in accessing health care?
Thank you so much for your comments and for the question. Certainly, being able to provide access and improve options is critical for both physicians choosing to come and serve in the north and provide care in our community. Often we hear from our physicians that the flight availability is a significant barrier for them to be able to get into Timmins and then return home to their home practice, where as well they have patients awaiting for care. The same goes for patients. Often patients are needing to travel to have follow-up care or specialized care. The ability to travel into Billy Bishop gives them the opportunity to be able to travel in often on a same-day approach, or be able to be right downtown, be able to access their care in the specialized hospitals, and then be able to return home and really alleviate the burden that comes with that travel.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thinking about your response there, I'm thinking about the locum program that you did make mention in your deputation earlier. And I do think about the specialists, ophthalmologists, or when it comes to eye care, because that relates specifically to diabetes as well, and how important it is to have that access on a timely basis. I also think about other types when I think about children and children's health and having sick kids downtown to Toronto, and what they do for children across this province is phenomenal. Could you maybe comment on that, on children's health from the north?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are often needing to transfer children requiring higher level of care to sick kids. We also have a program that transfers to CHEO, so being able to access through Billy Bishop onto Ottawa is critical for their care journey. Often those children require multiple visits on an ongoing basis. And, you know, being able to get in and out enables them to receive the care that they need. We also have specialists coming up from both institutions to our community to ensure that follow-up care can be provided close to home. The highest percentage of travel that we're seeing currently is related to ophthalmology. We've also developed a really strong relationship with UFT, where a specialist ophthalmologist is bringing a resident up to our community for training. That has enabled us to dramatically reduce the wait times. Without that reliable travel, we would be definitely impacting that direct access to care.
Yeah, thank you. That's important to hear, and thank you very much for your comments on the ophthalmology, because that's good to know that you're getting that specialized care as well. And one more quick question for you, and it relates to the families of the children, the families of the loved ones who are needing this care and this access. Maybe if you could talk quickly about what that means to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Often young children do require support with a caregiver. Being able to travel with their child and be able to ensure that they're easily accessible and providing that support to the families. Often those travel decisions are difficult and complex. If travel is interrupted, then care gets interrupted, and that journey and the outcomes are negatively impacted. It is a very difficult and stressful time for families when they're needing to seek care outside of their home community. Being able to ensure that it's stable, reliable, and accessible.
Thank you so much. That concludes the time allocated. We're moving over to the official opposition, MPP Bell.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for coming. My first question is to Kate Fife, the President and CEO of Timmins and District Hospital. Thanks so much for being here. As a CEO, what are the biggest issues you face as a hospital to meet the demand of healthcare in Timmins?
So currently the biggest challenge that we're facing is having physician coverage. It is the most instability that we've seen, and often we are seeing significant gaps in care related to having coverage available. In our hospital, we provide the obstetrics care for the entire region that we serve, a population of 110,000 individuals. We currently are seeing gaps in that care, and we've seen our locum pool shrink dramatically because of the instability related to travel and travel arrangements.
Is your hospital operating in deficit?
Our hospital ended last year in a balanced position. However, the demands on our hospital is significantly growing. So we have received pressure relief funding to be able to support that increased demand on our hospital.
Is your hospital operating at capacity or operating at above capacity?
Our hospital is operating above capacity. In the last 6 years, we've seen a growth in demand of approximately 60%. Patients are coming into our hospital requiring higher level of care, really related to the lack of access that we've seen for care as close to home as possible.
When I did pre-budget consultations, we heard from a lot of hospital administrators who talked about the issue around wage parity and wages in general, not just for doctors, but also for nurses, personal support workers. Do you, as a CEO, do you see wages as being an issue when it comes to recruiting and retaining workers?
Our hospital has been able, as I mentioned, we've seen a significant growth in demands for service. At the same time, we've been able to recruit the required the required nursing and personal support, as well as support staff to be able to stabilize that growth. We were relying heavily on agency nursing. However, we have been able to successfully recruit so that we have one of the lowest vacancy rates that we've seen in a long time. I do think, though, from a physician perspective, we've seen investments into the physician contracts. However, providing care in the north is critical, and we recognize that we're taking physicians. There is a shortage of physicians, including family physicians. And it is critical that we're able to be competitive in the north to make sure that we have that physician coverage to be able to support care delivery.
When I look at reports about how much it's going to potentially cost the government to invest in Billy Bishop Airport to allow for the expansion, we're hearing numbers of $1 billion. And when I think about what we could do to improve healthcare with $1 billion, I think it would be significant, especially if we put it in the north. I've got a question around connectivity and Billy Bishop Airport and Pearson. So as you probably know, Pearson Airport is undergoing an expansion to provide for air traffic of about 65 million people a year. And we've also got a new development where we now have the Union Pearson Express, which travels from downtown Toronto to Pearson Airport. It runs very frequently. I just did a little check on how long it takes to get from Pearson and Porter to Princess Margaret, major cancer hospital in Ontario. And the difference in Uber is about 16 minutes. And the difference on public transit is about 5 minutes. So when it comes to connectivity, especially when you're going downtown, there's very little difference between the two. So help me out here. Why is it so important for Billy Bishop to be expanded to meet the need for travel when Pearson is already undergoing an expansion to meet this demand?
So I think we need additional capacity. It is critical that capacity is provided, which will enable patients and physicians to be able to access on a reliable basis. The ability to come and be downtown in a very short time period is attractive for physicians. It's where they're working, and being able to fly in and out on a same-day basis really will help us being able to attract and recruit physicians.
Okay, I just want to emphasize to you that the difference between getting from Porter to Pearson to downtown on public transit is about 5 minutes. My final question is to Milroy from CAPE. We've heard earlier today some members from the Conservative government say, some of these, health impacts and the noise and so on, it's fear-mongering. As a doctor, do you think the health impact of the airport expansion is fear-mongering?
No, absolutely not. And by the way, I speak as a specialist, as an ophthalmologist who actually does service the north. And I can say that, our biggest problem is actually the absence or the lack of human health resources. It's not a jet plane landing strip at Billy Bishop that is constraining the ability of physicians to go up north. And it is certainly not fear-mongering. We need to understand the connections between...
Includes the 6.5 minutes to the official opposition. Now we are moving to the third party. MPP Margaret.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all our speakers for coming in today. Why don't we continue on with Millie? Did you want to finish that?
I so appreciate that opportunity. I was saying that our policies need to recognize the larger connectivity between the problems we're trying to solve. And we're trained to look at the cost-benefit ratio when we make decisions in healthcare. The cost-benefit ratio of increasing our carbon emissions and the pollution impacts that I just talked about in my deputation do not merit the minimal so-called benefits as MPP Bell just pointed out, that the connectivity to specialist care in Toronto is very, very comparable with Pearson. And look at the scenario. We heard Hope Airways talking about bringing in, say, patients with cancers. But we need to understand that if we are increasing our flights and our emissions, we are causing the very cancers that then require that care and need those patients being brought back down here.
And now to a question from me. So thank you very much for your presentation. And so when you were listing all the pollutants, I was wondering if you were including, so that was pollutants from air traffic. Were you also including vehicular traffic in that, in those numbers?
No. So here I am just trying to isolate out the impacts of aviation-induced pollution alone. And on top of that, of course, traffic-induced pollution, industrial pollution, those are all piled on top of the figures that I already gave you.
Okay. So then with the expansion proposal, with the current City of Toronto transportation data of over 400 cars an hour coming in, sometimes double that actually, it would lead to an increase in congestion, like a complete boondoggle of a bottleneck down there on a very narrow area, as we say, the busiest. One of the busiest intersections in the busiest city in the world would add to more pollutants. Obviously, that would have you worried.
Yes, absolutely. It is additive and cumulative.
Okay, great. And then we'll go to Kate from Timmins District Hospital. Thank you. What are your closest airports to Timmins? There's one in Timmins?
That's correct. We have airport in Timmins.
Okay. And what is that? Is that in need of any infrastructure investment? We're hearing from my colleagues that a lot of northern airports are in bad need of investment.
Unfortunately, I don't have the details on the level of investment for our local airport.
And do you have any statistics on people using, from your point of view, doctors, whomever, patients using flying into Billy Bishop versus flying into Lester B. Pearson?
I don't have the details, but I do know that both are options that are used. Often, if a flight is delayed, we're looking at the available options across both of the airports. So I would say it's probably equitable at this point.
Great. And have you been to Toronto recently? Have you flown into Toronto recently? Yeah. And to Billy Bishop or Lester B?
I have flown into Billy Bishop. I haven't flown into Toronto to Pearson recently.
Okay, because I'm not sure when the last time you did fly in, but we do have an amazing Up Express. There's huge investment in that transit. It's basically under 30 minutes to get downtown. I personally come from the beach, and I take the TTC for a mere $3 and change, and it gets me out there quickly. So I just want to put that on the record that it's actually quicker in many ways just to go out to Lester B than to get into that bottleneck, and with the new proposal, even worse. Okay, and then over to No Jets. Norm, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. So, you're familiar with City Council because you follow it, I'm sure. And so there was the proposal back in 2024 because there definitely needs to be safety improvements done to the airport.
Absolutely agreed.
And there was I've heard different pronunciations, Reza,
1
Reza.
minute.
1, 2, or 3, and City Council picked Reza 1, and we're hearing today that Reza 3 was the one that was required. Do you think that would be if they had adopted that, we wouldn't be here today?
So I don't believe that Reza 3 is required. That was the largest of the runway and safety areas with costs shooting up of over $100 million. And the access way that was offered on the side of the airport actually is opposed by Friends of Hanlon's Point.
So, okay. So good to know. But also people were worried about 800 vehicles a year, including school buses, traversing the runway, which Reza 3 would prevent.
Yeah, I mean, I think the airport hardly allows a school bus through. It might be 1 or 2 a year or something like that.
We're hearing 800 vehicles a year.
Yeah, there are plenty of service vehicles, but that's
still dangerous.
I think that Ports Toronto could hardly pay for Reza 1. They needed an extension of the tripartite agreement to pay for that, and that was like $70 million. My recollection of Reza 3 was.
Thank you so much. That concludes the 6.5 minutes. We'll be moving over to the government side. MPP Sandhu. MPP Kariwal.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all of our presenters today. Definitely a lot of interesting conversation taking place here today. And I just wanted to especially thank the Timmins District Hospital, your President and CEO, Kate Fife. Thank you for all the great work that you do serving the people of Timmins, and thank you for appearing today. And my questioning today is more so for No Jets TO and Mr. Norman. In this conversation, now we were just talking about RESA 3 with MPP McMahon. What kind of experience do you have to make the determination that Reza 3 is not required?
Yeah, so I followed the City Council debate and discussion, and it was verified there during that City Council debate that Reza 1 would be sufficient for a runway and safety area. So they are going to expand the runway 150 meters on both ends.
What qualifications does your organization have, or what kind of relationship do they have to say that Reza 3 is not the answer?
All we do are rely on city staff and expert reports that say that Reza 1 was a sufficient solution for the runway and safety area. Transport Canada said so as well. We rely on experts.
Thank you. And I just want to hone back into the conversation that we were having on the tripartite agreement. And the tripartite agreement, what Ontario's position is that we're going to be taking over Toronto's position. 2/3 of this is still, the voting capacity is with the Port Authority and the federal government. So whatever takes place in Toronto is going to be supportive by all three. What we're doing is we're replacing Toronto's position, and the only money that we're spending on this airport is for any lands that need to be purchased or acquired from the City of Toronto for their land value or today's market value, what have you. And we've been making sure that we make Toronto whole, even with our new deal that we made with Mayor Olivia Chow and the money that was spent there. So with this tripartite agreement, now with Ontario coming into the loop and your position being that there should be no jets at Billy Bishop at all, and you in your through the chair, your position in your remarks earlier today really alluded to the fact that Ontario has no say in the matter, and Bill 110 isn't going to do anything for anything. So if that's the case, why do you even oppose 110 when 2/3 of the voting power is with the other two parties?
I appreciate the question. I'm very happy to answer it. Torontonians and Ontarians at large are kind of horrified by these expropriations that were done without reason. Little Norway Park is a beloved public space for the Bathurst Key residents, and losing any part of that is going to really hurt.
There, speaking on behalf of the government, Little Norway Park will remain a park, will always
in its
be a
entirety,
park, and we will support the park. So we can continue from that portion.
Yeah, and that remain a park is not good enough for us because we could lose quite a lot of that park and it still remains a park. That is unacceptable to the residents of Bathurst Key and unacceptable to those who enjoy the waterfront.
So I want to talk to you, like you said, the residents of Bathurst Key, but this airport's going to serve more than just Bathurst Key. This airport is about serving all of Ontario, and we've had speakers that have talked about the benefits of this expansion expansion from the morning all the way till now. What do you have to say to the people that rely on that expansion that's going to serve the northern communities that are going to fly in and then have better access to health care? And now we've talked about the timing. Oh, it's a 15-minute Uber ride, it's a 10-minute Uber ride, it's a 5-minute Uber ride. The numbers keep fluctuating. Well, the fact of the matter is the amount of gridlock that we now see that's coming into the city. Like, I travel every day from Brampton to Toronto. I drive in every day, and if necessary, I can take transportation, but depending on my meeting schedules, it's easier for me to drive in. But my drive every day is assorted with a different time at any given hour of that day. Some days it could take me an hour 45 minutes. Some days it can just take me 45 minutes. And I've had a flight cancellation from Pearson where I've had to take a flight from Billy Bishop, and just the travel time at that moment from Pearson to Billy Bishop was about 45 minutes. So when this airport is going to help expand that capacity to bring in people from the north and connect them to Toronto, what does NoJets TO have to say about that?
So I'm extremely glad you brought up traffic, because the environmental assessment done in 2017 highlights that traffic will get worse in some areas around the island airport by 450%. The average queue length at every intersection will be longer than the intersection itself. They said, if this stuff can't be resolved, don't even consider the expansion, because you are going to make it impossible to get there. It is a cul-de-sac. It is not very easy to access. And, I would say also that Ontarians cherish their Toronto Islands. And there is excess capacity right now at that island airport, with the numbers dipping a little bit to 1.7 million. So there's capacity right now to add more flights to the north.
Basically, what I'm taking from this conversation that we're having today, through you, Chair, is that you represent the people that live adjacent, nearby to that airport. You're not taking a look at the considerations when it comes to the provincial aspect of this approach. And when it comes to the agreement, it's not just a provincial agreement. It's going to be supported by Ports Toronto. It's going to be supported by the federal government. 2/3 of the voting power is with them. 1/3 of the voting power is with us.
Yes.
My major concern here in this particular situation was the fact that we weren't able to go to our ESA 3 at that time, because the City of Toronto didn't vote in favor of that and they didn't support that. So with the provincial government support, we're going to make sure we're able to increase those safety standards to what it should be and take a look at what this airport can do, not only for the few kilometers around it, but for the province as a whole. Chair, where do we stand on... In 40 seconds, I'm just going to provide my closing remarks at this point. I don't think there's anything left to say, but I want to thank all of the presenters for coming today and giving their presentation, and thank you for your remarks.
Thanks. You're shutting Torontonians out of this debate. It's unacceptable.
There was no question back to you. Thank you.
All right, through the chair, I would appreciate through the chair, but that concludes the time allocated to the government side. We're moving over to the official opposition. MPP Glover.
Thank you. Actually, I'll pick up on that line of questioning. So to Norm DiPasquale, thank you for being here today. The Conservative member just said that you are only representing the people who live around the airport, but there are 28 million visitors to the Toronto waterfront every year. It's Canada's #1 tourist destination. What impact do you think having jets fly, land, or take off every 2.5 minutes over the waterfront would have on the tourism industry?
Yeah, the effect of a jet every 2.5 minutes is essentially Pearson on the lake. You are changing, this revitalized waterfront that we've invested billions in and has returned billions more back. That is the crown jewel, our waterfront. Tourists from around the world visit it. Ontarians love to come down. Ontarians go to Toronto Island. It is a well-loved place, and we have invested 2 decades and billions of dollars in revitalizing it. And this jet expansion would dominate the waterfront and is absolutely in conflict with our revitalized waterfront.
The Conservative member also said that it would be the federal government and the provincial government that would be in control of this. Does that not speak to your own argument that it's really the federal government behind the scenes that is pulling the strings, but they don't want to come out front because they want to protect the downtown Liberal MPs from taking the flack for actually destroying our waterfront by expanding this airport?
Yeah, I would ask the federal government to stand up and be honest about where they stand on this, because they are ultimately the decision makers. It doesn't matter what the Ontario government does here at Queen's Park. Yeah. The decision maker is the federal government. So I would really like them to be a lot clearer with their stance.
Okay, thank you. And I'd ask a couple of questions to Dr. Fife. Thank you so much for your presentation today. Let's see, you talked about the health impacts of ultrafine particles, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide. There is an elementary school 200 meters from the runway. And they're going to be increasing the number of flights from a turboprop every 20 minutes to a jet every 2.5 minutes, landing right beside that elementary school. What would the health impacts be on the children that attend that school?
And as I mentioned, of course, there are all of the impacts that I discussed. So whether it's lung diseases, so especially things like asthma are a big problem with children. But a lot of the developmental and sort of functional issues, so things such as hyperactivity and inattention disorder, deficits in memory and reading comprehension, those have been clearly linked to UFP exposure. There is a clear example with Munich Airport, where the old airport was located. There was a high incidence of these issues in children. When that airport closed, the children's functioning improved, and in the new location where the Munich Airport opened, these problems cropped up in the children around. There's irrefutable evidence.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask my next question to Millie Roy. So I lived in Geraldton in the 1980s. And I was working for the M&R, and I cut line for mining companies, did a bunch of different jobs. And one of the big issues at that time was there was a big fight to get a northern medical school because doctors who were born and trained in the south didn't want to work in the north. So they created the Northern Ontario School of Medicine in order to recruit local northern residents as doctors who would go back to their local communities. It seems that, we're still fighting this fight of people from the north having to come to the south to get hospital care, to get treatment for cancers and other illnesses. Would it not be better, like the estimate for this airport, and I've heard anywhere from $1 to $5 billion to expand this airport, when we're already expanding Pearson right up the street. If we were to take that average, say $3 billion, and invest that into fixing the airports in Northern Ontario, keeping them open, and also into healthcare, training physicians, local physicians in the north, and providing care in the north, would that not provide care closer to home for Northern Ontario residents?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And again, it gets to this problem of human health resources that we are in a crisis here, and therefore definitely training people who actually live in those communities or nearby is the best solution. We should also look at the fact that, for example, having being on, for example, a First Nations reserve area, that transportation when services like Greyhound bus lines shut down. Those were some of the largest hits for people who live in those communities. If we're talking connectivity, it does not have to mean a jet plane landing at Billy Bishop. That really is not getting to the heart of the problem, or certainly not to the solution.
Okay, I'll address the question to Kate Fife from Timmins. If you were to get $3 billion, if the government was to invest the $3 billion instead of investing in expanding Billy Bishop, but into fixing the airports and providing health care in the north at the hospital in Timmins, in North Bay, in Sudbury, in Thunder Bay, Kenora, would that not provide care that's closer to home for those residents?
Oh, absolutely. Investment into the north is critical to increase access to care
1 minute.
in the north. I think, though, we know that we will always need to connect to a higher level of care provided in a larger center. That means that our patients will need to travel to the larger centers to receive that access to care. So it isn't one or the other. We are establishing a health system which really is incumbent to build on each other. My hospital will not be able to meet the needs of all of the local community. They need higher level specialist care that only can be provided in the larger centers.
Right, okay, but if there was more care and more types of treatment available in the north, then fewer people would have to travel to the south.
Absolutely. Increasing.
Thank you. That concludes the time allocated. We're moving over to the third party. I see MPP Hazel.
So I just want to say thank you to all the three presenters. And my question is going to be to Kate from Timmins and District Hospital. And so we all know how the hospitals are stretched in the north, but I didn't really hear that from you. So my question for you is, what are your operations budget pressures for 2025 and 2026?
So we're entering the year with a 15 million deficit, which is about 8% to our bottom line. We also, though, are experiencing pressures from a physician capacity perspective, needing to add incentives to attract physicians to come north, largely due to the travel barriers that are currently in place.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. So my follow-up question to you is, how are the roads around your hospital, and what highways do you access, ambulances access to get patients to your hospital?
So we have a number of different routes that patients travel. Each of them have challenges as well. We also, though, service a large percentage of our region as fly-in rural remote communities. So there are a number of different ways to be able to access the hospital, coming from east, west, north, and south.
Right. And thank you for sharing that. So my next question is, so we've got the highways, the roads, I guess driving is not safe. We hear it every day in the chamber from our northern colleagues. Also, I had, add that to both my bills, and we know that is a challenge. Then you have a deficit with your operational budget for 2025, 2026. And so you're supporting the expansion of the airport because you spoke about connectivity. So what is your top concern right now for your hospital that you need to be focusing on?
Physician coverage. I can't care for patients if I don't have physicians in my hospital who are willing to travel to our community to provide care.
And how many doctors travel right now from Toronto to Timmins to take care of your patients on a yearly basis?
Last year, we saw approximately 4,000 physician days of coverage by locum physicians traveling by air.
And how many doctors do you have locally?
Many of our specialists are single physician specialists, so they are reliant on 75% or more of coverage provided by locum physicians.
Yeah, and the
so
reason so in essence of time, because I've got to go on to the other presentation. So in essence of time, what I'm trying to understand is your reasoning of supporting the expansion and not supporting and creating capacity from your local area in Timmins, and also the detriment of the highways and the roads up in the north. And so thank you so much for your response to my question. I want to move forward to Cape, and I'm going to be very quick with my question. Thank you for sharing those data, okay? Because I've learned a lot today, and we know there is no environmental assessment for this airport. There is no assessment on the congestion. There is no cost-benefit analysis. But for the record, can you tell me your top 3 concerns that you have right now, including the UFP, because I learned a lot about that today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, concern number 1 is the mix of pollutants being emitted from these jets, including the UFPs, as well as nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and the fact that we are struggling to understand the rationale. And again, as I mentioned, that if we study cost-benefit ratios when we make decisions in medicine and in healthcare, we feel that another priority is simply that the reallocation of the funds it would take to expand Billy Bishop could be far better spent. The per capita health allocation in Ontario is the lowest per capita in the country. A little cash infusion into our per capita spending would go a long way and would result in better health outcomes across the board. We want to look at the big picture.
1 minute.
So in summary, what is it you really want this government to understand from your presentation today? Like sum it up and sum it up very strong.
Right. Certainly not to go ahead with Bill 110 and this Billy Bishop expansion. Study the problems, understand the health impacts of UFPs, put a hold on any plans to expand until there's a full understanding of the problem and better ways to spend this funds in order to support the health of the population, and modernization, which must be evidence-based and be forward-looking instead of making policy based in the rear-view mirror.
Very good. Thank you.
Perfect timing. That concludes the time for this set of presenters.